And we're also about to be joined by our audience on YouTube, and they will be joining us now. And we want to say welcome also to our YouTube audience. With me, I have Sean Davis. He is the president of MCCA Youth. We also have Don Wayne Kogi, a former youth pastor here in our district, South Caribbean District, assigned to the James Street Spicetown Circuit. And we'll also be joined later by Carmencita Lamar. She is a member of the Youth and Young Adults Commission in the Leeward Islands District. Welcome, gentlemen, and to the lady to come. Hope you all are doing well. It is still, I believe is it still morning where you are, Sean? Not yet afternoon?
It's morning, still morning.
Yeah, still late morning for Sean and very, very early morning for Don Wayne, just after midnight. So definitely we have a very global panel with us today. I'll just invite you guys to share a bit about yourself. We'll start with right, you're muted now. Right, Sean, you can just say a bit about yourself. Okay, Don, maybe we'll go to you then. Don Wayne.
All right. Yeah.
You can share a bit about yourself. Hello, Don Wayne.
Okay. Yeah. I don't know if you're hearing it, but I'm hearing an echo. Yeah.
Right. Don't worry about it.
All right. Okay. Good morning. Yes. It's almost 1 in the morning here in the Philippines. My name is Don Wayne Kogay, former Global Mission Fellow of the General Board of Global Ministries of the United Methodist Church. I was assigned, yes, in the Caribbean, but I went back after my term. I recently came back in the Philippines. I'm currently working in a Methodist institution as well, as an internal auditor. And yeah, welcome to this afternoon time session. Hope you enjoy.
Right. Also have Sean. Sean, you can tell us a bit about yourself.
Okay, hi everyone. My name is Sean Davis. I am as John said earlier, I'm the president of MCCA Youth, and I'm also the lay youth pastor in the Mount Fletcher Circuit, which is in the Jamaica district. And I love working with your youth and young adults, and I mean I have a liking for our seniors as well. So put all that together, and I guess that represents the whole church, and I'm excited to engage with you how best we can advance some actions that would actually further propel the word and the work of God across the region in this season and the seasons to come.
Okay, great. And we have our third panelist, our only female panelist, Carmencita. Welcome. Now that you're here with us, you can tell us a bit about yourself before we get started. You're muted. Okay, I guess we'll chat back in with her later. Um, Looking at the pledge now, we would have had our keynote yesterday in which we would have announced our exciting plans that our commitment mainly around personal expression in ministry and around education. And then earlier in our term, actually in our launch event, we would have announced lots of other things, especially some revolving around community. And definitely throughout the year, we have been working to achieve all those commitments here at South Caribbean Youth. It's something that we are very used to in the church, where whether it's at our conference or council services or other big events like missionary or all this, we hear about all these grand plans. Oftentimes, what really issue lies is in that execution of those plans, or really taking these plans and these pledges and commitments and transforming them into something actionable, something tangible that persons can see. Earlier in the year, we would have also announced that this is our decade for youth empowerment here in the South Caribbean district. We're declaring it as that decade. And of course, South Caribbean Youth came as a major step in that direction. I want us to look at a couple other areas in which we want to move forward, in which we have made certain pledges and are planning to provide action on them in the not so distant future. Sean, regarding the MCCA strategic direction, a document which would have gone out, would have been worked on by persons from all the districts, and really is our plan as a connection going forward. What are some of the ways in which MCCA Youth has played a hand in shaping that strategic direction, specifically for the empowerment of our youth and young adults across the connection?
Okay, so yes, John, as you said, we have the MCCA Youth Strategic Plan, and incidentally, as we are coming to the end of this 2021-22 church year, we are actually to be in a mode of reviewing what the last 3 years looked like and seeing how we make our adjustments. Obviously, when we would have developed a plan and done the consultations towards crafting same, COVID-19 was not a reality. But what we did realize, as in the midst of implementing across districts, that COVID presented opportunities for us to share expertise and to build greater synergies in terms of executing the plans. Now, I think if we had greater buy-in at the onset, we would have been in a place to say we would have accomplished much more. But I do think that on assessing the strategic plan as it is now, we would identify various areas of commonalities, various areas of growth and development, but also there remains a number of areas that does not necessarily require any extensive work, but requires more collaboration and commitment to make those strategies realized. Further to that, the MCCA has now developed a unified strategic direction, which from an MCCA youth perspective, we do intend to go back to in this review stage, go back to the drawing board and see how, in planning for the next 3 years, realigning those targets that may not have been accomplished, or even looking at those accomplished that can be bolstered, how do we cause those to become in alignment with the unified strategic direction of the MCCA? And I do think that and we will make that representation that the MCCA takes a concerted effort in engaging our youth and young adults regarding this unified strategic direction, because the reality is that, believe it or not, youth and young adults of today will be the primary beneficiaries of whatever direction the church channels its energy in today. And so that's something that we will be championing the cause for. and partnering with the Connectional Office and the different leaders of the four pillars of the Unified Strategic Direction to help youth and young adults to feel a part of this direction,
Yeah,
and to aid the church in moving in the direction that God intends for us to go. You know.
definitely. Um, Something that is interesting about what you said is about the buy-in from the beginning. Um, what what have been some ways in which over the last plan, so you would have seen what would have happened in that last plan, and now as you look forward into the next couple of years, your next strategic years, what are some key ways in which you're trying to build that buy-in, not just at that collectional or district level, but all the way down to the individual member, the individual youth who hears about MCCA youth? You're muted again.
Are you hearing me now?
Yes.
Okay, good. So, at the core of accomplishing any success at the connectional level, I think one of the things that all of us must appreciate is that in order for the connection to exist and achieve and have any success, and by connection I mean connectional church generally, but also connectional youth and young adults, MCCA youth, that we must appreciate the foundation of the Methodist movement. It's a congregational church, and so any success that is seemingly being accomplished at the top, if I could use that term, but is not materializing at the base, is not real success. And so one of the critical things that we'll have to do is to boost the capacity of our youth and young adult leaders to actually build and plant and start movements at the base, strengthen the movements at the base, strengthen the youth fellowships, so much so that at the very congregational levels, persons become involved, persons become aware, persons' spirits are enriched, and they feel a part of the process. And instead of thinking of a trickle down effect where the connection causes people to experience things at the base, that as youth and young adults, we try to build the capacity of our young people at the ground, and we build up so that we can build a stronger church rather than relying on support in, as it were.
Yeah. And we have one person, definitely, Don Wayne, who over the last couple of years coming in new to the space, has had to quickly learn and adapt to the culture and to how to go about building ministries. Don Wayne, over the last couple of years of your term, I think especially when you were assigned directly to James Street Church, you would have started My JS Official, the Instagram ministry. You'd have also had the youth lines prior, just before the pandemic. How has it been for you in that building stage of ministries and garnering that support and buy-in, not kind of up and down, up as in getting that support from the leaders and the ministers, but also down, getting that support from the youth who you want to be involved?
It's actually, well, thank you for that question. It's interesting how how the word buy-in has been used, and I could tell you tons of stories about trying to get people involved, especially when it's an outsider leading something that has not been done before, or leading something that may have not been done over the years. Um, I'd like to use the word that you used earlier, community. Um, I really had to dig in. I had to start from, I guess I had to start from scratch, because first I have to learn not just the culture. I have to learn the powers that work. Who are the big wigs? But also I have to learn how to act, because coming into the Caribbean, I may say that I have wealth of experience already. doing ministry as early as age 12, doing youth leadership as early as age 12 as well. At first, I had this thought that, I have this brilliant idea. We should do this thing. We should do this and that. This is doable. But it took a while before I somehow I have been led to lead ministries. It's a learning experience. It's an unlearning experience, and it was also a learning experience. Some of us have started Christian education as at a young age, but Christian education may not necessarily be the same now as compared to when we were starting out. So for me to sell these ideas, I did not actually try to sell these ideas so that people would buy in. What I did was to actually reach out, build that community, or introduce myself into this community so that I would be seen as part of the community. When I became part of the community, that's when we had conversations, actual conversations on how we can partner, even if I am coming in as an outsider, as an Asian person coming into the Caribbean. I mean, I know there's a wealth of experience, idea, millennials and the Gen Zs in the Caribbean. It's just that maybe there are some gaps that we have to address. I tried to tap on those gaps. I guess my first stint with James Street, the circuit, Spiceland circuit, it's all about bridging these gaps. It's when I came back in 2019 that I had to really sit in meetings and really be more brave in suggesting things, suggesting changes. And that's when I didn't even have to sell so that people would buy in. I just gave them this idea, constant prodding, constant sharing of the vision, constant reminder of as Christians.
Right.
We're not even talking about, hey, I'm from Barbados, I'm from St. Lucia, I'm from Grenada. No, we are talking as disciples of Christ. So I think this is the reason why Youth Line came out, the junior worship came out as well, the mentorship came out, the social media ministry came out. It was not my idea. It was a collective effort. It was a collective idea that, hey, I mean, this is doable. What do you think about it? How can we partner on it? So, yeah, that's my contribution.
I like what you said at the end, where it wasn't necessarily your vision, but it was a collective effort. Carmencita, in your commission, and definitely when you have different contexts, sure, all persons may be in the same district, but you like us are in a multi-island district. I think even further spread out, have a circuit in the ABC Islands. How has that process kind of been going through the planning and ensuring that everybody feels a similar level of ownership with the plans initiative, that everybody feels like, yes, these pledges, these commitments, all of this is personally mine. How have you guys been able to go about creating that level of ownership in everyone? Okay, right. She seems to have dropped out. I'll just pass it straight on to you, Sean. You guys going into a new stage for planning, a new triennium or 5 year period. Um, how are you going about that process in building and stirring up ownership in the different programs?
All right, so a part of the strategy, and I think the approach Donway alluded to perhaps is what is being applied in this instance, in that we have already commenced doing what we've called district audits of the experience over the last 3 years, what has obtained, what were the strengths, what were the weaknesses, what are the commonalities, what are the things that we can adopt from each other, and share best practices and strengthen where weaknesses exist, and to create spaces where our youth and young adult leaders can actually share more in the collective development of the MCCA youth and the whole MCCA. So that's one approach, the audits that are being done, because it's only by assessing the experience that you're now able to see what areas there are, opportunities there are for improvement, and what strategies can be adjusted or reapplied in similar ways, because it doesn't always mean reinventing the wheel. And then beyond that, we will need to also have further consultations with the wider membership of the MCCA, because one of the realities is that a lot of things we do, and if we think about it at congregational or circuit or district levels, sometimes we have engagements and they are exclusive, and so only some persons go. Encuentro, sometimes only people who can afford it go. Activities in districts, only some persons who can afford to travel to the island that is hosting will go, or only circuits who can afford to send persons to a local camp. Even in single territory districts like my own, only people who can afford will go. So a lot of our ministry become exclusive, and we know that we are trying to reflect or represent a ministry that is all encompassing and all inclusive. And so a biggie for us is definitely engaging more people, because we do appreciate that sometimes when we have the engagements, even at this level, that some people who are to be at this space and the people who we really want to target do not either get invited, even if know that we have links to share, they are not the ones who the links are forwarded to, or they don't have access. And so we have to create spaces where the information is being shared wide and far, and that everybody gets a voice in the space, and not just get a seat at the table, but at the table, when persons get that seat at the table, that the chair becomes functional, that the tabletop becomes functional, and everything that is shared is appreciated, everything that is plated is regarded as being useful, even if it's not the viewpoint that the mass subscribe to.
Right. Um, we have youth commission leaders with us. We have youth commission executives with us. We have youth group leaders with us. Where do they start with that? So they've brought persons to the table, or they've tried to. How do they get started with that? Because as it can be difficult, especially when we're almost in this transition phase where we're bringing in more young people, but you still have the older persons, you still have the established persons there. So it can be a bit difficult. What would your advice be to them? How do they get started with that?
So to start, I think engagement is important. So engaging those who you already have in the space, and ascertain what it is that they want to accomplish. Sometimes, as youth leaders, we and young adult leaders, we impose the direction on the young people, and it doesn't necessarily take them in the direction that they want, and as a result, they will pull out. So a biggie is to engage them, find out what it is that they want, and that's with doing any social intervention. We can't just go into communities, and I'd say the church community in this instance, and say that they need houses, because although they may not be living in houses, perhaps their primary need is not a house. And so we have to find a way to engage them, to ascertain what it is that they want to realize, and then help them to chart their own path, help them to create the plan to realize that which they really want to be a part of, so that when you begin to tighten the plans, they will all you already, you don't have to now solicit buy-in, as it were, because they would have already bought into something that they would have initiated, ideas that they would have articulated, and so they can embrace it as their own, as you know, helping them as youth leaders, commission leaders, helping them to realize it. Another thing will be the capacity building of the young people. So you're gonna train your leadership, the commissions, and definitely are willing to assist circuits and districts with in terms of bolstering the capacity of these commissions or councils to actually execute their mandate. And then beyond that, having trained the leaders, there is a space too to boost the capacity of the young people. And that's why, for instance, in our guidance document, we propose this five-dimensional approach to doing youth and young adults ministry. We call it SERMS. So there's the spiritual component, the educational component, the recreational component, the missional component, and the S for service. And see how with those five areas we can solicit the views of the young people, the youth, the young adults, going through their transitions, and see how can we institute activities that will respond to their needs of today. Because if persons are just being fed in one direction and not the other, then the possibilities of retaining them becomes minimal, and also not just retaining, but retaining for them to become purposeful and share in the ministry of God in the church is something that we would lose out on if they don't already have this full appreciation and feel a part of the process.
I think yeah, that's and that kind of holistic approach that you shared to youth ministry. I think that has been missing in some aspects where we focus so much on maybe the spiritual side or um maybe even the casual fun side sometimes that some things still feel missing. And of course, persons go and look for them in other places. Carmen Sita, in the way that your commission has been going about planning and executing over the last, how have you been able to design and create offerings and programs that cater to the holistic development of the youth and young adults in your district?
Well, I can say the last couple of years have been how my connection this afternoon has gone. It has been challenging. We have had many plans. We've started efforts, and then because we're in so many different circuits across the Caribbean, it gets challenging to get everyone on board. So with our commission, we have a core group, and what we've tried to do with that core group is to reach out to subsections of the district. So there would be someone responsible for Sabas, St. Eustatius, Anguilla, those group of islands together. Another group, Antigua, Barbados, so Antigua, Dominica. We try to group it together more or less. We have different activities that we do online or virtual activities around a large spectrum of topics about dating, about the prayer life. So we try to tap into the things that are of interest for youth and young adults within our districts. We do that by having our representatives go back in our individual circuits and find out what are the issues that are affecting the youth and young adults. What support do they need from the church with regard thereto, and we try to cater whatever we do to those things specifically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that the point that you brought up about the grouping, I want to dive a bit deeper into that, and if you don't mind, a bit more details. For example, Georgetown, Mount Coke, and Kingston, Shasta those are two of our bigger circuits. I think 16 and 10 congregations each, all of them in St. Vincent. So you have 26 congregations in that entire island. How would you recommend that they go about that grouping and start engaging the congregation? Some which may be small and inactive, others big, so you have varying sizes, varying demographics. How would you recommend that they start that kind of grouping process?
Well, our grouping process was based on ours were based on geographical situations, so where we are geographically, and also the similarities in the cultures, because within the Caribbean, we still have different cultures among the islands. But if it's on one island, then I would suggest the geographical locations. How close are these congregations to each other, and have the groupings there? Because if I look at St. Martin, for example, we're not an extremely large circuit, French or Dutch. We each have 5 congregations. However, if you have 3 or 4 youth and young adults in each congregation, it's hard to get a momentum if a congregation is trying to do something on its own. However, if you group it together and as a circuit, we start doing things as a collective for all youth and young adults, it gets easier to build that momentum and to build the interest in further learning about Christ, further learning about our church and our doctrines.
All right. Yeah, definitely a challenge that we are seeing a lot of cases. And when you spoke about that, building that momentum, we may get 1 or 2 things started and then nothing for the rest of the year, or nothing for the next 2 years. And now with the COVID and the pandemic, we have lots and lots more excuses. So we start to say, oh, well, that's why I couldn't get it done. How do we get over that fear of failure? Because a lot of times I get the sense that, especially when you're small, especially when, in the church we talk about our financial issues and we say, we may not have enough capital or enough buffer that we can afford to make some mistakes. At least we don't feel that way. What would you say to somebody, to a group of circuits, or a group of islands, or a group of congregations, to get over that fear of failure that we may feel, and just to quickly move from that pledge and commitment into some action?
That I don't have an answer to. I would say we often have this fear of failure, but we haven't planned, so we don't know exactly what we're afraid of. We're afraid of failure, but we don't know what that failure is going to look like. So when we say, for example, I had mentioned to you that an idea I had was to start building a church nursery, a plant nursery. All right, we're afraid we're going to fail, but what is the failure that we're looking at? Is it a failure that we're not going to generate sales? Is it a failure that these plants, these seedlings aren't going to grow? Where does our failure lie? I think probably failure is something that we're all afraid of. It's a fear, especially with our financial constraints as a church. It's a realistic fear to have. However, we should look into where that failure could potentially lie. If the failure might lie in being able to generate sales for those plants, okay, is it really essential to then generate sales for the plants? Because the same plants we can use for a church garden, to give to those that are needy, to generate for our soup kitchens and so forth. So where does our failure lie, and how else can we still continue to do what we need to do despite mitigating a potential failure?
Right. Yeah, and what you said about the financial side is definitely a one that comes as a hindrance, a barrier, a lot of times. Don Wayne, you deal heavily with the financial side of things. How does a small congregation, how do they get into the mindset of, I guess, more into abundance? Yes, you might see not that many figures in the bank account or in the treasury, but how do we get into the mindset of we have enough? How do we plan properly so that we know that we have enough to execute? Yeah. Still hearing you. So go ahead.
I'd like to say I'm not a fan of guru. I do some, but I
Right.
Yeah.
And not okay, yeah. Definitely can't hear you now. It's really going in and out. Actually, yeah, try muting it for a while. I'll come back to you.
Okay.
Sean, again, you are in this stage, I guess, now that a lot of other organizations, obviously at a lower level, would be at, where you would have had plans. For example, I met with the Youth Commission in Kingston, Chateaublair, and they're coming to the end of a strategic plan for them and going into that replanning. And Carmen Sita spoke about we fear all these things, but we haven't planned, so we don't really know what we are feared. How important do you think is constant documentation, constant review, constant assessing, so that when you get to that planning stage, you can look back at, say, okay, yeah, this is where we would have failed. This is the kind of issues that we want to face, that we want to deal with. And now as we go into the new plan, how do we kind of incorporate those into the future?
Okay, I think it's absolutely important. I think I'm maybe at a place that Commentator is at in terms of responding to the idea of fear, because I think that maybe it's not a matter of fear. It may be about commitment, or some voids that are created along the way that actually have in the past or has the potential to in the future limit our ability to deliver on some of the ideas that we have. And so, to get to your direct question in terms of documentation, I think it is critical that that we treat with I don't really want to use the word professional, but maybe that's the safest way to go now. That we treat with the same regard as we would with our academic activities, with our work activities, that we document every step of the way. And so at our planning phase, we are doing our brainstorming, that we are documenting all the ideas, the ones that we will work with and the ones that we will throw out, the ones that we'll put in the parking lot and the ones that we will drive along the way, right? And then, having done all our brainstorming, then we come together again, the same group, beginning to prioritize the activities that we are intending to do with the overarching priorities of the church community, aligning those with the needs of society, the needs of community, the needs of young people, the needs of those we are seeking to target. And then again, we begin to do our slashing, and we start to develop a refined product. And then we will get to a place now where people are already seeing what are the realistic things that we can target. What are the resources needed to execute these? What are the financial resources required? What are the human resources required? And how much of it do we have? And can we move along with, or will we have to solicit in terms of partnering with other circuits or other congregations or other districts to realize? And so I think putting everything on paper, as it were, or know that we're in the virtual space and electronic with everything, but putting everything in a documented way will really help us to visualize what it is that we're working towards. And when there are gaps, we'll be able to not just think about those gaps, but we will see the gaps before us and be able to fill those gaps and the voids as they come. And then there will also be a better space, a better perspective from which to do our monitoring of activities and to evaluate at the end of these processes, at the end of these periods, how we did, how well did we do, and what can we do going forward if we are going to do a retake of certain activities, or we're going to revamp the activities. We don't want to revamp and still have the same results in the end unless they were successful results. So it's most critical.
Okay, great. And as we wind down, there'd be a lot that we spoke about, a lot that we wouldn't have spoken about. And definitely higher up in the levels you go, more often than not, you have persons who would have been more experienced in this process, who would have gone through many iterations and experiences of what you're talking about, where you assess, plan, all of these things. What would your recommendation be to an organization like South Caribbean Youth, like the Leeward Islands Youth and Young Adult Commission, like a lot of the other circuit and district organizations, in empowering their young person, just like the person that we have here at DYLTS, empowering them to and educating them to go about this process? Where do you think we should start?
All right. I think one of the, and particularly within your context where you're multi-territory, multi-island, multi-state, as it were, and with other distinguishing features, the culture, the language, etc. It's important that you collaborate. So create spaces where, as leaders in different spaces, can come together and actually identify your best practices and see what's working and where can you share your ideas and where can you share your resources. So collaboration is important. The second C, I'd say, is if I'm to leave you with 3 C's, it will be collaborate, communicate will be the second one. So persons need to know what's happening. Everybody who you are seeking to target need to know what's happening. And the messaging must be consistent across the board so that you would appear as a unified movement, and that young people, for instance, youth and young adults, would actually be seen as being moving forward, as people moving forward in one direction. And then finally, I'd say you need to build commitment. And by commitment, I mean commitment to God, because a lot of times, a lot of what we seek to do with our youth and young adults are recreational based, educational based, academic based, socially based, emotionally based even. But we do not give as much emphasis on the spiritual commitment. And I think for real success to be realized in the church community and in people's lives generally, we have to encourage them towards a commitment to God. And when we build the commitment of everyone to God, so one person at a time, everybody will not commit at the same levels at the onset, but we lead them to Christ, and we provide the mechanisms to provide support as they are journeying with God and in the community of faith. Then you'll find that you have more people who are willing to resist fear, if that is what challenges moving forward. And then you'll find persons too who will push regardless of the challenges that come, because they are not in it for the youth movement to succeed or for the young adult movement to succeed, but they are in it so that God can be glorified, and essentially the glorification of God can be manifested in a way where people experience God and experience a blessing of community. So that's perhaps how I'd wrap my thoughts on that subject matter.
Awesome. Definitely greatly appreciated. And on that note, I think we will end off our discussion for today. Again, greatly appreciated Sean, Carmencita, and Don Wayne. Sean, you spoke about commitment, and this is a testament to the commitment of person. You spoke about collaboration and consistency and communication, and I trust that throughout DYLTS, persons will take advantage of the opportunities to do all three. And also that as we continue, as we go into a new planning era, as we go into a new stage, a new time in our church, that we continue to embody these three things. You spoke about especially being a multi-island district, and definitely being multi-island as a connection. We are not like the US or like England, where it be one land. And so definitely the strengths that we have in numbers, the advantage that we have in varying contexts and varying points of views and perspectives, and we definitely need to continue to take advantage of that and utilize it as much as possible. Thank you to the three of you. Trust that all our participants would have enjoyed it and would have benefited from it. And also our online audience on YouTube, again, thank you for joining us. This is yet another session in our Beyond DYLTS program, where we are inviting the entire church community to join with the delegates and us, the presenters, in the DYLTS experience. This will be our second day, and we have one more session planned for today, and then we go into the rest of the Beyond DYLTS program for the week. So we definitely look forward to you continuing to join us as we learn, as we develop, as we grow, as we seek to push youth ministry forward in our districts and the connection as a whole, all for the glory. Thank you. Have a good afternoon, everyone. And for our DYLTS participants, enjoy the rest of your lunch break. I'll see you at 2 o'clock.